Hey, are you ready for 3 practice hacks that'll make 2026 your breakthrough year on guitar? I gotta be honest, sometimes I wonder if guitar players really want to be good. The truth is, most struggling lead guitarists just aren't honest with themselves. They don't really know the fretboard, they can't connect their ideas over chord changes, and their phrasing is weak at best. Most of these players, they'll never challenge themselves and they're gonna stay stuck forever. But if you do want to be a good lead guitar player, in this lesson, I'm going to give you 3 grown-up practice exercises that address all of those issues. Each of these 3 exercises develop fretboard knowledge and musicality at the same time. So if you're ready for real improvement, it's time to stop bullshitting yourself. Time to stop practicing overly simplistic drills that don't make you any better. And let's make 2026 the year that you finally make massive progress and transform into a player. All right, if you're still watching, that tells me you're serious about being a player, so let's get into it. Ridiculously effective exercise number 1 is all about triad inversions, but not in a dry theory book way. We're going to move these triad inversions through a simple chord progression, but we're also going to add a little phrasing that turns these triad shapes into licks, so you can really hear how to make music with these shapes. This one trains your fingers and your ear at the same time. The chord progression we're using today is a simple 1, 6, 4, 5 in the key of C. So we got the chord C, A minor, F, and G. And I'm not going to talk about theory except to say triads are made up of a root note and 2 other notes, a 3rd interval and a 5th interval above that root notes. And if we play the notes in that order, the root, the 3rd, and the 5th, we call that the root form. So for a C major triad in root form, we'd have the notes C, E, and G. Now we can also start the triad on the 3rd, play the 3rd, the 5th, and the root, and we would call that the first inversion. For C, that would be starting on an E note, playing a G note or the 5th, and then the root. Now we can also start a triad on the 5th and play the 5th, the root, and the 3rd. We would call that the second inversion. In the key of C, C major triad, that would be a G note, which is the 5th, a root note C, and the 3rd, which is E. Now in this exercise, we're going to work through all the triad inversions of each chord, but just on the G, B, and high E strings. Here's the root form triad for each of the 4 chords. We're going to play C, E, and G for C major up at the 15th position. For A minor, we've got the notes A, C, and E at the 12th position. For F major, we've got the notes F, A, and C at the 8th position, and the G major triad has the notes G, B, and D at the 10th position. And when we play this actual lick in the exercise, we're going to add 1 extra note and a couple of phrasing elements to our triad shapes. So starting off with the root form, we're going to play the root, the 3rd, and the 5th of each triad, and then we're going to play the 7th interval of each root note, and we're going to bend it up to the octave note from where we started. We're going to re-articulate the octave, release that bend, and play back down to our root. So for C, we would play C, E, G, B, bend it to C, hit that C note again, release the bend, and play G, E, and C. And we get back to that original C, we're going to hit it with some vibrato. That's a nice sounding phrase. For A minor, we're going to play A, C, E, G is the minor 7th of A. We're going to bend that up to A, and then descend. For F, we're going to play F, A, and C. E is the major 7th of F, and we're going to bend that up to F. Descend. And then for G, we've got the notes G, B, D. F is the flat 7. Remember, we're in the key of C. bend that up to G, and then descend back down. Okay, here's what those phrases sound like over the backing track. All right, now let's try the same phrasing and rhythm with first inversion shapes, which start on the third interval. C first inversion has the notes E, G, and C. That's the third, the fifth, and the root. And after the root, we're going to play the second or D and bend it up to E. And then release that bend and descend back down to our starting E as we did before. A minor has the notes C, E, and A. The second is B. We're going to bend that up to C. For F, we're going to play A, C, and F. G is the second. We're going to bend that up to A. For G, we're going to play the notes B, D, and G. A is the second of G. We're going to bend that up to B. Those are the first inversions. Let's try those over the backing track. Lastly, let's do our second inversion triads. Those are the ones that start on the fifth interval. For C, we're going to play the notes G, C, and E. And for this inversion, we're going to add in the fourth, which is F. We're going to bend that note up to G. The second inversion of A minor has the notes E, A, and C. D is the fourth of A. We're going to bend that up to E. For F, we've got the notes C, F, and A. B is the fourth of F. We're going to bend that up to C. And lastly, the second inversion of G major has the notes D, G, B. C is the fourth of G, and we're going to bend that up to D. So let's play those over the backing track. And when you practice, really put your heart into the phrasing. Don't just go through the motions. Make it as realistic as possible. Here we go. Hey, if you like what you're hearing so far, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It really helps me out. I need to keep growing. Thanks. All right, that is a great triad exercise. It goes beyond just memorizing shapes, and it forces you to be musical. Practicing musically is so important, especially if you're a player that finds their solos sounding like practice exercises. Ridiculously effective guitar exercise number 2, we're going to play a 1-octave scale pattern that starts on the root of each chord. As with the triads, we're just going to play on the G, B, and high E strings. But you should ultimately be working on finding these patterns on every string set across the neck. Practicing in a 1-octave span makes things a little more realistic as far as I'm concerned, unless you're trying to shred multi-octave scale patterns. But most of the time, we're going to be playing licks and phrases that exist in a 1-octave span. Here's a pattern for C major up at the 17th position. Here's the pattern to play over A minor. This is at the 14th position. Here's a pattern over the F chord at the 10th position. And here's the pattern for G major at the 12th position. Remember when we play these to play the notes of the C major scale, but we're starting it and playing it to the root of each chord in the progression. Our first variation, we're going to play 16th notes ascending and descending over each chord like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, simple and straightforward, just getting the patterns under our fingers. Here's what that sounds like over the backing track. Okay, next variation, we're going to kick things up a notch and we're going to play 16th note triplets. We're going to ascend straight up the scale, but we're going to descend in thirds, which gives things a cool stair-step sequence that we can actually use in our solos. Here's the C scale shape and our new pattern with the 16th note triplets and descending thirds. Now, A minor sounds like this. All right, let's try those over the backing track. Check it out. Now for one last variation of this drill, and if you've watched many of my videos at all, you know a theme of my teaching is you're gonna play like you practice, so you better be practicing like you want to play. Yes, you do have to memorize scale and arpeggio patterns. There's no two ways about it. But once you've got a pattern down, you have to start making it musical. That's what we're going to do in this last variation. We're going to make up licks in each of the scale patterns that we just learned over each chord. Now, a lick can be something as simple as one note that sustains an entire measure. Or you could go wild and use our 16th note triplet sequence. But mix things up, add some phrasing, make sure your timing is on point. Once again, we want to make our practice as sincere as possible and really put our heart into it. I'm going to play through the changes, give you an idea of what this can sound like. Wish me luck. Our ridiculously effective exercise number 3, it's all about phrasing. Phrasing is the secret sauce that separates players of a similar technical ability. Call it feel, call it making the guitar sing, call it the professional touch. You can hear two players of a similar technical ability play the same thing, but the one with the best vibrato, that's the one we're going to listen to. You can hear two players play the same thing, but maybe one of those players, their bends aren't quite in tune. Well, we don't want to hear that. I think you get the point. Phrasing gives you your voice, your personality on the instrument. And if you're not working on it, your licks and lines, they're never going to sound the way you want them to. In this exercise, we're going to create a simple phrase or motif. How about this over each chord? We're going to use the second inversion triad shapes as a starting point. We're going to play the fifth, which is the starting note of that second inversion, the octave of that fifth, the starting point again, and then the fourth, the octave, the third twice, the second, the third, the second, and then the root of the chord. So over C, those are the notes G, the octave, G again, F, G, E twice, D, E, D, and C. Okay, that's not a bad sounding group of notes, but playing it straight like that is lame. So we're going to hit it with the phrasing hammer. We're going to slide into that first G and even give it a little vibrato. We're going to play the octave, the root again, and then the fourth, and give that F note some vibrato. We're going to play that octave G again, and then the next note would be E, but we're going to bend the D at the 15th fret of the B string up to E. And not only that, but when I pick that D note, I'm going to do what's called a rake. And I'm muting with my palm the low E, the A, the D, and G strings. So I'm going to pick them, but they really don't ring out. And I hit that D note and bend it to E. And that rake just gives it more power and weight. So we're going to play that bent note again. And then release it down to D. And then we're going to do a rake into the D and a quick slide to E and back. And then finish by pulling off to the C note and give it vibrato. So we're playing just 11 notes in that phrase, but we've got multiple slides, multiple bends, picking rakes, and vibrato on a few key notes. That's how you make the guitar talk. That's how you add power to your licks. And that's how you develop your voice on the guitar. I'm going to play that phrase now over each chording the backing track, moving it through the chord changes, and using those second inversion triad shapes as my guideposts to start the licks. Let's give it a try. You know, so much of learning phrasing, it's just experimentation. You can use the triad inversions, or you can use that one octave scale pattern to come up with licks that you can move from chord to chord. Once you come up with a good melody, start asking yourself the question, where can I add in some phrasing elements to really bring these notes to life? Do a lot of listening to players with great phrasing like Jeff Beck, Andy Timmons, Guthrie Governor, David Gilmour. Steal the phrasing that they use. Really try to internalize it and make it your own. Start simple. Work on adding vibrato in a couple spots. Add a slide to the first note of a phrase and another slide somewhere in the middle. Use those pick rakes on any note that you bend to give that note some extra oomph. Before long, good phrasing will just become a natural part of how you play. I want to challenge you to commit 30 minutes a day, 10 minutes per exercise, for the first 90 days of 2026. When you're feeling comfortable with the process, start rotating through the different keys. Start playing the ideas on different string sets. At the end of each week, record a take of each exercise and score yourself on your timing, your phrasing, and your accuracy. You don't need to be overly critical, but do be honest with yourself. That's grown-up practicing. You do these exercises diligently for a couple of months, and I promise you, you're going to make 2026 your best guitar year ever. And I hope you get started today. Thanks for watching. I wish you all the best. Have fun with that guitar. Never stop learning. Bye.